The coastal morning air in Seacliff, California, carried the scent of salt and jasmine. It was the kind of perfect autumn day that made people believe in paradise. The Pacific stretched endlessly beyond the cliffs, a sheet of hammered silver under the climbing sun. Monarch butterflies drifted through the eucalyptus groves like scattered petals. This was wealth's favorite hiding place, a pristine enclave where million-dollar problems were solved, with phone calls and the messy realities of the world were kept at arm's length. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne sat alone on a weathered bench in Sunset Ridge Park. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. A cup of black coffee cooling in his hand. He was a man in his mid-30s, lean and hard-bodied in a way that spoke of functional strength rather than vanity. His dark hair was military short, though growing out slightly after weeks away from base. His eyes, a deep gray like storm clouds over the ocean, held a 1,000-yard stare that wouldn't fully fade, no matter how many. Sunrises he watched in peace. He'd been back stateside for exactly 17 days. 17 days of mandatory leave after a deployment that had gone sideways in ways he couldn't discuss. 17 days of pretending the nightmares didn't wake him at 3 in the morning, soaked in cold sweat, reaching for weapons that weren't there. His therapist at the VA called it operational stress. Marcus called it the price of doing business. The park was nearly empty at this early hour. A few joggers traced the coastal path. An elderly man practiced Tai Chi near the rose garden. And there, nosing through the underbrush near the picnic area, was the dog. Marcus had first noticed him 3 days ago. A German shepherd, probably around 80 pounds, with a coat that had once been magnificent but was now matted and dull. The dog moved with a pronounced limp, favoring his right hind leg. No collar, no tags, just survival instinct and wariness in his amber eyes. Marcus had done his research. He'd asked around at the local shelter, posted on community boards. Nobody claimed him. Nobody seemed to care. The animal control officer, a burnt-out woman named Sharon, had shrugged when he called. "We're at capacity. If he's not aggressive and he's surviving, he's low priority. Bring him in if you can catch him." Marcus could catch him. He'd spent 2 tours working with military K-9 units. He understood dogs, especially the damaged ones. He saw himself in this animal, a warrior cast aside, surviving on instinct and stubborn refusal to quit. He'd been feeding the dog for 3 days now. Not approaching, not pushing, just leaving food and water in the same spot each morning. Building trust the way you build anything worth having, slowly and with respect. This morning, for the first time, the dog approached within 10 feet. He was watching Marcus with those intelligent amber eyes, calculating risk versus reward. Marcus could see the scars now, old ones crisscrossing the dog's muzzle and shoulders. This wasn't a pet who'd wandered off. This was a fighter who'd been through hell. "Hey there, soldier," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely above a murmur. He didn't make eye contact, didn't move, just sat still as stone, letting the dog decide. "Got breakfast if you want it." No strings attached. The dog's ears twitched forward. He took one careful step closer. Marcus slowly reached into the small cooler at his feet and pulled out a plastic container. He opened it with minimal movement. Inside was grilled chicken breast, plain and unseasoned, cut into chunks. He tossed one piece onto the grass about 5 feet away. The dog's nose quivered. Hunger won over caution. He darted forward, snatched the chicken, and retreated, chewing quickly while keeping his eyes locked on Marcus. "Good boy," Marcus said, his voice carrying approval without excitement. "You've got discipline. Somebody trained you right." He tossed another piece, this one only 3 feet away. Again, the dog approached, snatched it, and backed off. But this time he didn't retreat as far. This time he sat down, his posture shifting from pure defense to something approaching acceptance. Marcus felt something shift in his own chest. A tightness he hadn't realized was there, loosened slightly. For 3 weeks he'd felt disconnected from everything, floating in a gray space between the war zone and civilian life. But this, sitting in the morning sun, earning the trust of a damaged animal, this felt real. This felt like purpose. "You need a name," Marcus said conversationally, tossing another piece of chicken. The dog caught it mid-air this time, his reflexes sharp despite his condition. "Can't keep calling you soldier or buddy. You've got presence. You've got bearing." He studied the dog's scarred face, the intelligence in those eyes. "How about Titan? You look like you've held the weight of the world and didn't break." The dog's tail gave one slow, uncertain wag. Marcus smiled, the first genuine expression his face had formed in days. "Titan it is." It took another 10 minutes, 3 more pieces of chicken, and absolute stillness. But eventually, Titan approached to within arm's reach. His body was tense, ready to bolt at the slightest wrong move, but he was there, present, choosing to trust. Marcus didn't reach out, not yet. That would come in time. Instead, he placed the rest of the chicken container on the ground and slid it forward with his boot. "That's for you, all of it. I'll be here tomorrow, same time. We'll work on getting you checked out by a vet. Get that leg looked at." He paused, his voice dropping even lower. "We'll figure this out together, okay? I don't leave men behind. Or dogs." Titan looked at him for a long moment, and Marcus could have sworn the dog understood every word. Then the shepherd lowered his head to the container and began to eat, not frantically, but with purpose, still watchful, but no longer terrified. Marcus sat back against the bench, sipping his cold coffee, feeling something like peace settle over him for the first time since he'd come home. The morning sun warmed his face. The ocean breeze carried the scent of freedom, and sitting 5 feet away, scarred and limping but unbroken, was a creature who understood what it meant to survive. Neither of them noticed the black Range Rover that pulled into the parking lot at the far end of the park. Neither of them paid attention to the young man who emerged from the driver's seat, dressed in designer athletic wear that cost more than most people's rent, a cruel smirk playing on his lips as he surveyed the park like he owned it. Neither of them could have known that in less than 24 hours, everything would change. The quiet morning ritual would become a crime scene. Trust would turn to terror, and Marcus Thorne would stop being a man on leave and become exactly what he'd been trained to be, a weapon with a mission. But for now, in this perfect stolen moment of autumn peace, there was just a man and a dog, 2 warriors finding their way back from the darkness, 1 piece of chicken at a time. The name on the Range Rover's registration was Dominic Ashford, but everyone in Seacliff knew him as the Prince of Privilege. At 22, he'd never worked a day in his life, never faced a consequence that Daddy's lawyers couldn't erase, and never encountered a problem that money couldn't solve or bury. His father, Richard Ashford, was the city's shadow king. Ashford Development Corporation had built half of Seacliff's luxury waterfront properties, and Richard's donations to local campaigns ensured that zoning laws, building permits, and inconvenient regulations bent to his will. The Ashford name wasn't just wealthy, it was untouchable. Dominic had the empty, handsome face of someone who'd never been told no. His jaw was square, his hair artfully tousled, his smile a weapon he deployed with practiced ease on anyone he deemed useful. But his eyes, pale blue and cold, held nothing but contempt for a world that existed only to serve him. He'd come to Sunset Ridge Park this morning for one reason, to meet his dealer. Not for drugs, those he could get delivered to his oceanfront condo, but for something more specialized. Ramirez was a veterinary tech who moonlighted selling controlled substances. Medical-grade ketamine for Dominic's parties, tranquilizers for when things got too rowdy, and other compounds, darker ones, for when Dominic wanted to have what he called fun. Ramirez was waiting by the restrooms, a nervous man in his 40s with darting eyes and perpetually sweaty palms. He handed over a small insulated bag without ceremony. "Everything you asked for," Ramirez muttered, not meeting Dominic's eyes. "But man, some of this stuff, if anyone finds out I'm moving it." "Nobody's going to find out anything," Dominic said, his voice dripping with bored arrogance. He didn't bother to lower his volume. Who would challenge him? He peeled off several $100 bills from a money clip and tossed them at Ramirez with the casual cruelty of throwing scraps to a beggar. "Same time next week." As Ramirez scurried away, Dominic opened the insulated bag to verify the contents. Ketamine. Check. Rohypnol. Check. And at the bottom, wrapped in a medical biohazard bag, a small vial labeled in veterinary shorthand, pentobarbital compound, high concentration. Dominic smiled. He'd told Ramirez he needed it to euthanize a sick horse on his father's estate. In reality, he had no plans for it yet. He just liked having access to things that could cause damage. It made him feel powerful. He was about to head back to his Range Rover when he saw them, the homeless-looking guy on the bench and the mangy stray dog. The sight offended him on a visceral level. This was Seacliff, not some inner-city dump. Strays and vagrants had no place here, cluttering up the aesthetic of his morning. The man on the bench looked military. Dominic decided with a sneer. Probably some washout living in his car, feeding rats with 4 legs. The dog itself was pathetic, limping around like a broken toy. An idea formed in Dominic's mind, the kind of idea that made his pulse quicken with excitement. It was so simple, so easy, and nobody would ever connect it to him. He walked back to his Range Rover, retrieved a protein bar from his gym bag, and returned to the park. He made a show of eating half of it as he strolled along the path, glancing occasionally at the man and dog. The veteran type didn't even look his way. Perfect. When he was on the far side of the picnic area, out of direct line of sight, Dominic pulled the vial of pentobarbital from the insulated bag. The compound was designed for large animals, lethal in even small doses. He unwrapped what remained of the protein bar, crumbled half of it into a napkin, and carefully poured a measured amount of the clear liquid over the chunks. The poison soaked in immediately, invisible, and odorless. Dominic's hands didn't shake. He felt no remorse, no hesitation. This was a game, a test of whether he could do something genuinely untraceable. If the dog died, who would care? It was a stray, nature taking its course. He wrapped the poisoned food back in the napkin and walked casually toward the area where he'd seen the dog sniffing around earlier. There was a cluster of bushes near the playground, currently empty in the early morning hour. He dropped the napkin-wrapped chunks on the ground, partially hidden beneath a low shrub where a foraging animal would find it. Then he walked back to his Range Rover, climbed in, and sat watching through his tinted windows. He wanted to see it happen. He wanted to witness the result of his handiwork. 20 minutes passed. Dominic scrolled through his phone, half bored, already wondering if the dog would even find the bait. Then he saw movement. The German shepherd had finished the chicken the veteran had given him and was exploring the park's perimeter. His nose, honed by instinct and hunger, picked up the scent of food. He limped toward the bushes. Dominic leaned forward, his pulse quickening. The dog's head disappeared into the foliage. There was a pause. Then the shepherd emerged, chewing. "Got you," Dominic whispered, a grin spreading across his face. He waited 5 more minutes, but nothing dramatic happened immediately. Poison like this wasn't instant. It would take time. The dog would probably just wander off somewhere and die quietly. Disappointed by the lack of immediate spectacle, Dominic started his engine and drove away, already thinking about brunch. He never saw Marcus Thorne stand up from the bench, his attention drawn by Titan's sudden interest in the bushes. He never saw the veteran's eyes narrow as the dog emerged, chewing on something that definitely hadn't come from Marcus's cooler. And he certainly never imagined that in feeding that poison to Titan, he'd just declared war on a man. Trained to hunt, to track, and to deliver justice with surgical precision, Marcus knew something was wrong within minutes. Titan, who'd been moving with cautious energy just moments before, suddenly sat down heavily. His breathing changed, becoming rapid and shallow. The dog's eyes, so sharp and aware just moments ago, began to glaze with confusion. Marcus was on his feet instantly, his combat training snapping into place. He moved toward Titan with calm authority, his voice steady and commanding. "Easy, boy. I'm coming. Stay with me." Titan tried to stand, his legs trembling. He managed 2 steps before his hindquarters buckled. A low whine escaped his throat, a sound of distress that cut through Marcus like a blade. Marcus dropped to his knees beside the dog, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. He checked Titan's gums, pale, almost white. Pupils, dilated and unresponsive. Breathing, labored and getting worse. These weren't symptoms of injury or illness. This was poisoning. No, 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 Marcus breathed, his mind racing through possibilities. Rat poison? Antifreeze? Something else? He looked around frantically and saw the bushes where Titan had been foraging. He ran over, dropped to the ground, and searched. There, partially concealed, was a napkin with crumbs. Marcus didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled out his phone and took 3 rapid photos, documenting the location and the evidence. Then, using a stick, he carefully lifted the napkin. Even from inches away, he could smell something chemical, something that didn't belong in food. He grabbed a plastic bag from his pocket, one he'd brought for cleaning up after Titan, and carefully secured the napkin inside. Evidence. Then he was back at Titan's side. The dog was on his side now, his breathing dangerously shallow. His eyes found Marcus's face, and in them was trust, confusion, and fear. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He only knew he was dying. "Not today," Marcus said, his voice iron hard with determination. "You don't get to quit on me, soldier. We just found each other." He scooped Titan into his arms. 80 pounds of dead weight, but Marcus had carried wounded men through worse. His truck was in the parking lot, a old Ford F-150 that had seen better days but ran like a tank. He moved at a tactical jog, not running, not panicking, but moving with absolute purpose. He laid Titan carefully in the back seat, the dog's breathing now coming in irregular gasps. Marcus's hands were shaking as he started the engine, not from fear but from the adrenaline dump of a soldier who just watched a friendly take a hit. He pulled out his phone, voice-activated the GPS. "Nearest emergency veterinary hospital." The robotic voice responded, "Seacliff Animal Emergency Center, 4.2 miles, estimated time 8 minutes. "Make it 4, Marcus growled, gunning the engine. He drove with the controlled aggression of someone who'd navigated war zones. Traffic laws became suggestions. Red lights were yield signs. He laid on the horn, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching back to keep contact with Titan's heaving side. "Stay with me, Titan. That's an order. You don't get to check out. Not now. Not like this." The dog's eyes were glazing over, his breathing becoming sporadic. Marcus knew the signs of a body shutting down. He'd seen them in men. Seeing them in this dog, this warrior he'd just started to connect with, filled him with a rage so pure and cold it was almost calming. Someone had done this deliberately. The location of that food, the napkin wrapper, the chemical smell, this wasn't an accident. This was intentional, malicious. Someone had tried to murder a helpless animal for sport or spite or some other reason Marcus couldn't fathom, and whoever had done it had just made the worst mistake of their life. Marcus screeched into the emergency clinic's parking lot, not bothering with a proper parking space. He yanked open the back door, gathered Titan into his arms, and kicked through the entrance doors with his boot. The waiting room was half full, a woman with a cat carrier, a man with a Labrador on a leash, a receptionist behind a desk, who looked up with practiced professional calm that immediately shattered when she saw Marcus. He was 6 feet of coiled fury, his gray eyes burning with intensity, carrying a dying dog in his arms. His voice cut through the space like a command from a battlefield. "This dog has been poisoned. He needs treatment now. Not in 10 minutes. Now." A veterinarian, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and quick hands, appeared from a back room. "Doctor." Elena Vasquez had seen emergencies before, but the intensity radiating from this man and the critical state of the animal told her this was different. "Bring him back immediately," she commanded, gesturing to a trauma bay. "What was the poison?" "Unknown. Ingested approximately 15 minutes ago. Found this at the scene." Marcus pulled the evidence bag from his pocket as he laid Titan on the examination table. Chemical smell, possibly veterinary-grade compound. Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened slightly. This wasn't an accident. She turned to her tech, a young man named Josh. "Start IV fluids, wide-bore catheter. I need activated charcoal prep and atropine standing by. Call doctor. Rains, tell him we have a critical tox case." She turned back to Marcus. "Sir, I need you to step back so we can work." Marcus didn't move. His hand was on Titan's head, grounding the terrified animal. "He doesn't know you. If I leave, he'll panic. I stay." Dr. Vasquez read the situation instantly. This wasn't negotiable. "Fine, but stand exactly where I tell you and don't interfere." Roger that. The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Dr. Vasquez and her team moved with practiced efficiency. IV lines were placed, blood was drawn. Activated charcoal was administered to bind any remaining poison in Titan's system. Throughout it all, Marcus stood like a stone, guardian, his hand on Titan's head, murmuring constant reassurance. "You're good, Titan. These are friendlies. They're fixing you up. Stay with me, soldier." Mission's not over. Dr. Vasquez worked quickly, her experienced hands checking vitals, administering counteragents. His heart rate's erratic, BP is crashing. "Josh, push 0.5 milligrams of atropine." She looked at Marcus. "What's his name?" "Titan. Titan, you're one tough dog. Don't quit on us now." She glanced at the evidence bag Marcus had placed on the counter. "That napkin might save his life. I need to run a fast tox screen." She called over her shoulder. "Marissa, get that sample to the lab. Priority rush. Tell them possible veterinary euthanasia compound." 30 minutes in, Titan's vitals began to stabilize. His breathing, while still labored, was becoming more regular. His heart rate, which had been dangerously high, started to level out. Dr. Vasquez finally allowed herself a cautious exhale. "He's responding. Whatever was in that food, we caught it in time. But he's not out of the woods yet. He needs to be monitored for at least 48 hours. Liver and kidney damage is a major risk with this kind of poisoning." "Do whatever it takes," Marcus said, his voice rough. "Cost isn't an issue." Dr. Vasquez looked at him carefully. "Sir, I have to ask, is this your dog? He has no collar, and his condition suggests he's been living rough for a while." Marcus met her eyes, his expression set. "He is now. As of 3 days ago when I started earning his trust. Someone tried to kill him today. That makes it personal." "Personal enough to report to the police?" "Already planning on it." Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. She'd been a veterinarian for 18 years. She'd seen accidents, negligence, and occasionally deliberate cruelty. But the cold, controlled fury in this man's eyes told her this was about to become something much bigger. "The lab results should be back in a few hours," she said quietly. "If this is what I think it is, pentobarbital or something similar, then whoever did this had access to controlled veterinary substances. That's not just animal cruelty. That's a serious crime." "Good," Marcus said flatly, "because I'm going to find whoever did this, and when I do, they're going to answer for it." In the climate-controlled comfort of his oceanfront condo, Dominic Ashford was already 3 mimosas deep, lounging on his balcony overlooking the Pacific, when his phone buzzed with a news alert from the local Seacliff community app. "Emergency at Sunset Ridge Park, dog poisoning suspected." He clicked on it, his pulse quickening with excitement. Someone had found the dog. Someone cared enough to report it. This was better than he'd hoped. He scrolled through the comments, looking for details. User Beachmom, 47. "I was at the park this morning and saw a man rush a German Shepherd to the vet. The poor thing looked like it was dying. Who would do something like this?" User Surfer Dave. "Probably rat poison left out by maintenance. Happens all the time. Sad, but not malicious." User Concerned Citizen, 92. "No way. My friend works at the emergency vet. She said the dog was deliberately poisoned with something heavy-duty. Police are involved." Dominic's smile faded slightly. Police involved was a complication, but not a serious one. There was no way to trace anything back to him. He'd worn gloves when handling the vial, hadn't he? Actually, no, he hadn't. But so what? His fingerprints weren't in any criminal database. And even if they were, his father's lawyers would bury any investigation before it started. He poured himself another mimosa and toasted the ocean. Here's to getting away with it. What Dominic didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the man who'd rushed that dog to the vet wasn't just some homeless veteran. He was a naval special warfare officer with access to resources Dominic couldn't imagine. And more importantly, he had the skills, the patience, and the cold determination to hunt down threats and neutralize them. The war had just started. Dominic had fired the first shot. He just didn't know he was already in the crosshairs. Marcus stayed at the clinic for 6 hours. He left only when Dr. Vasquez assured him that Titan was stable, sedated, and under constant monitoring. She'd moved the dog to a private recovery kennel where he could rest without stress. "He's a fighter," Dr. Vasquez said as she walked Marcus to the exit. Most dogs wouldn't have survived the dose that was in his system. The lab confirmed it veterinary-grade pentobarbital, the kind used for euthanasia. Whoever did this had professional access. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Can you give me a copy of the lab report?" "Already printed for you and for the police." She handed him a manila envelope. "Detective Carla Ruiz from Seacliff PD is handling the case. I gave her your contact information." "Appreciated." Marcus hesitated. "Doc, I want to formally adopt him. Whatever paperwork needs to happen." Dr. Vasquez smiled, the first genuine warmth in her expression since they'd met. "I was hoping you'd say that. We'll handle the adoption process. For now, he's registered under your name as his guardian. He's lucky you were there." "I'm the lucky one," Marcus said quietly. He drove back to his small rental, a converted garage apartment 3 blocks from the ocean. It wasn't much, just a studio with a kitchenette and a bathroom, but it was clean, quiet, and anonymous. Exactly what he'd needed when he'd come back from deployment, looking for a place to decompress away from the noise of the naval base. Inside, Marcus booted up his laptop, a secure military-issued device with encrypted access to databases most civilians didn't know existed. He'd been given continued clearance during his leave because his last mission was still being debriefed. That access was about to become very useful. He pulled up the Seacliff community app and started digging through posts about the park. Who had been there that morning? Were there any cameras? Any witnesses? One post caught his attention, time-stamped from earlier that day. User FitLife, Gina. Weird morning at Sunset Ridge. Saw that Ashford kid meeting some sketchy dude by the bathrooms. Looked like a drug deal, to be honest, not even trying to hide it anymore. Marcus clicked on Gina's profile. She was a fitness instructor who posted regularly about her morning runs. Her profile showed she'd been at the park around 7:30 a.m., right around the time Marcus had been there. He opened a separate search window and typed, Ashford, Seacliff, California. The results were immediate and extensive. Richard Ashford, real estate developer, major political donor, estimated net worth in the hundreds of millions. And his son, Dominic Ashford, aged 22, with a minor record that had been sealed by expensive lawyers, DUI. Assault charges dropped, a pattern of privilege and impunity. Marcus pulled up traffic camera databases, using his military access to scan footage from the park's surrounding streets that morning. It took him an hour, but he found it. A black Range Rover with custom plates entering the park at 7:45 a.m. and leaving at 8:20 a.m. He ran the plates through the DMV system, registered owner Dominic Ashford. Marcus sat back, his fingers steepled under his chin. The timeline fit. Ashford arrives at the park, meets with someone, spends time near the area where Titan found the poisoned food. Leaves just before Titan starts showing symptoms. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was a target. His phone rang. "Unknown number." "Thorne," he answered. "Lieutenant Commander Thorne? This is Detective Carla Ruiz, Seacliff PD. Doctor, Vasquez gave me your number regarding the poisoning incident at Sunset Ridge Park." "Copy that, Detective. What do you need from me?" "First, I need a formal statement. Second, I need to inform you that we're treating this as a felony animal cruelty case. The substance used isn't something you can buy at a hardware store. Whoever did this had professional access. That narrows our suspect pool considerably." "I have information that might help," Marcus said. He kept his tone neutral, professional. There was a vehicle in the park that morning. Black Range Rover, custom plates, registered to a Dominic Ashford. I have traffic cam footage showing arrival and departure times that align with the poisoning window. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss stories like this. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more incredible true stories of courage and loyalty. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Detective Ruiz spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. "Mr. Thorne, how did you access traffic camera footage?" "I'm active-duty military with current security clearance. I used authorized channels." Another pause. "I see. Well, that's certainly helpful information, but I need to advise you not to conduct your own investigation. This is a police matter now." Marcus heard what she wasn't saying. "Don't go after the Ashford kid. His family has power. This could get messy." "Understood, Detective. I'm just providing information. What happens next is your jurisdiction. I'll be in touch for that formal statement. In the meantime, keep yourself and your dog safe. If this was intentional, the perpetrator might not appreciate attention being drawn to their actions." After the call ended, Marcus sat in the growing darkness of his apartment, the only light coming from his laptop screen. Detective Ruiz was cautious, probably for good reason. The Ashfords had power. They had money. They had lawyers who could tie up an investigation for years. But Marcus wasn't bound by the same constraints as local law enforcement. He wasn't planning to break laws, but he also wasn't planning to sit back and wait for a system that might be compromised by wealth and influence. He thought about Titan, fighting for his life in a veterinary ICU because some spoiled rich kid had decided an animal's life was worth less than his momentary entertainment. Marcus opened a secure messaging app on his phone and typed out a message to a contact saved only as Skip. "Need a favor. Full background workup on Dominic Ashford, Seacliff, CA. Everything. Social media, financials, known associates, patterns of behavior, especially anything involving veterinary supply chains or controlled substances. No flags, no traces." The response came back in under a minute. "Roger. This official or personal?" Marcus's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he typed, "Personal, but priority. Copy. Give me 24 hours. Marcus closed the laptop. Tomorrow he'd visit Titan, make sure he was recovering. He'd give his formal statement to Detective Ruiz. He'd play the role of concerned citizen. But beneath that, in the cold, calculated part of his mind that had been honed by years of special operations training, he was already planning. Surveillance, pattern recognition, identifying vulnerabilities. Dominic Ashford had committed an act of cruelty and assumed he'd face no consequences. He was about to learn a very painful lesson. Some people don't respect wealth or power. Some people only respect strength. And Marcus Thorne had more than enough of that to go around. The Seacliff Yacht Club was the beating heart of the city's elite social scene. Perched on a private marina, it was a sprawling complex of white buildings, manicured lawns, and private docks where boats worth millions bobbed gently in their slips. Membership cost $50,000 a year, and the waiting list was years long unless your name carried weight. Richard Ashford's name carried more than weight. It carried gravity that bent reality around it. He sat in the club's private dining room, a space of understated elegance with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the marina. Across from him sat two men whose presence here was testament to Richard's true power. Mayor Douglas Brennan was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair, an expensive suit, and the practiced smile of someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of political survival. He'd been mayor of Seacliff for 12 years, and in that time, city contracts worth hundreds of millions had flowed through Ashford Development Corporation. The relationship was symbiotic and profitable. Beside him sat Chief of Police Raymond Cross, a large man with a military bearing that had long since softened into bureaucratic comfort. Chief Cross had risen through the ranks not through exceptional police work, but through exceptional political instincts. He knew which investigations to push and which to quietly shelve. "Gentlemen," Richard began, swirling a glass of 30-year-old scotch, "we have a small situation that needs managing." Mayor Brennan leaned back, his expression mildly curious. "What kind of situation?" "My son is being investigated for animal cruelty. Some nonsense about a stray dog in Sunset Ridge Park. Chief Cross frowned. I hadn't heard about this. It's being handled by Detective Ruiz. Apparently, someone's claiming Dominic poisoned a dog. Richard's tone made it clear how absurd he found the accusation. Obviously, this is ridiculous. Dominic was at the park that morning, yes, for his usual run, but he would never do something so barbaric. Who's making the accusation? The mayor asked. Some veteran. A transient type, apparently. He was feeding the stray and decided to blame Dominic when the animal got sick. Probably ate rat poison left by park maintenance, but this guy wants to make it into some kind of vendetta. Chief Cross nodded slowly. What do you need from us, Richard? I need this investigation to fade away quietly. No charges filed, no media attention. Detective Ruiz needs to be reminded that pursuing baseless accusations against prominent families isn't in anyone's best interest. The mayor and police chief exchanged a glance. This wasn't an unusual request. They'd managed situations like this before. A discreet phone call here, a reassignment there, pressure applied through appropriate channels. It was how Seacliff functioned beneath its pristine surface. Consider it handled, Chief Cross said. I'll have a conversation with Detective Ruiz. Explain that her time would be better spent on cases with actual evidence. And the veteran? Richard asked. I'll have a patrol unit pay him a visit. Friendly advice about filing false reports and wasting police resources. Most of these types fold pretty quickly when authority shows up. Richard smiled, the warm expression never quite reaching his eyes. I appreciate your continued support, gentlemen. Seacliff thrives because we understand how to maintain order and protect our community's reputation. Translation: Seacliff thrives because we protect our own and crush anyone who threatens the system. They raised their glasses in a toast, three men who believed themselves untouchable, making decisions that would shape lives and destroy futures, all while overlooking a sparkling marina under a perfect California sun. What none of them knew was that Marcus Thorne had already anticipated this exact scenario. He'd spent years operating in environments where corruption was the default, where local power structures existed to protect the powerful and punish the weak. He knew the playbook because he'd seen it executed in a dozen different countries. The difference was, in those countries, Marcus had been authorized to dismantle those systems. Here, he'd have to be more creative. But creative was something Marcus Thorne did very well. The patrol unit showed up at Marcus's apartment at 7 p.m. 2 officers, both young, both carrying themselves with the swagger of men who believed a badge made them unchallengeable. Officer Derek Paulson was the senior of the pair, a man in his early 30s with a thick neck and small aggressive eyes. His partner, Officer Mike Chen, was younger and less certain, his body language suggesting he wasn't entirely comfortable with whatever they'd been sent to do. Marcus opened the door before they could knock. He'd heard their cruiser pull up, had watched from his window as they'd checked the address and approached. He'd expected this visit. "Officers," Marcus said, his tone neutral and respectful. "What can I do for you?" Paulson hooked his thumbs in his duty belt, a posture designed to be intimidating. "Marcus Thorne? We need to have a conversation about the incident at Sunset Ridge Park. Happy to cooperate." Detective Ruiz said she'd be following up. "Is she with you?" "Detective Ruiz is busy with actual crimes," Paulson said, his voice heavy with implication. "We're here to give you some friendly advice." Marcus leaned against the doorframe, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "I'm listening. Filing false reports is a serious offense. It wastes city resources and can result in criminal charges. We understand you've been through some tough times." Paulson's eyes flicked over Marcus's appearance, taking in the military short hair, the lean hardness, and sometimes people in your situation struggle with distinguishing reality from paranoia. Marcus felt a cold smile tug at the corner of his mouth. They were trying to paint him as unstable. Classic tactic. My situation? Veteran, no permanent address, history of trauma. Paulson was reading from a script, Marcus realized. Someone had provided them with talking points. Sometimes guys like you see threats that aren't there. The park maintenance uses rodent control. The dog probably ate poison meant for rats. It's unfortunate, but it's not a crime. Interesting theory, Marcus said calmly. Except the lab report from the veterinary clinic confirms the poison was pentobarbital, a controlled substance used for euthanasia. That's not rat poison. And the food it was in was deliberately placed, not part of any maintenance protocol. Paulson's jaw tightened. Lab reports can be misinterpreted, not by trained professionals. And I have traffic. Camera footage showing Dominic Ashford's vehicle at the park during the relevant time window. Officer Chen shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going the way they'd been told it would. The veteran wasn't backing down. He wasn't intimidated. He was calm, factual, and clearly not someone who spooked easily. Paulson took a step forward, his voice dropping to a threatening growl. Let me be clear. You're new to Seacliff. You don't understand how things work here. The Ashford family has been part of this community for generations. They're respected, they're protected. You're nobody, a drifter with a dog. If you keep pushing this narrative, you're going to find yourself facing consequences you won't enjoy. Marcus straightened, his full height now apparent. He'd been slouching slightly, non-threatening. Now he stood at his full 6 feet, and the change in his posture was subtle but absolute. The relaxed civilian was gone. What remained was the operator. Officer Paulson, Marcus said, his voice quiet and absolutely controlled. I'm going to give you some friendly advice in return. I'm Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne, United States Navy, Special Warfare Command. I have an active security clearance, and I'm currently on authorized leave. I've filed a formal report with Detective Ruiz about a felony crime. That report is documented and cannot be disappeared. He paused, letting that sink in. Now, you can choose to do your job and investigate that crime, or you can choose to continue threatening a federal officer on behalf of a suspect. But I want you to understand something very clearly. I've spent the last 15 years operating in environments where people like you tried to intimidate people like me. It never ended well for them. The temperature in the conversation had dropped to Arctic levels. Paulson's face had gone from confident to uncertain. Officer Chen had actually taken a step back. I'm not making a threat, Marcus continued, his tone almost conversational. Now, I'm making an observation. When you go back to whoever sent you here, tell them that this isn't going away. Tell them that I have resources they haven't considered. And tell them that justice for Titan isn't negotiable. Marcus stepped back into his apartment. If you have official police business, have Detective Ruiz contact me. Otherwise, this conversation is over. Good evening, officers. He closed the door, leaving Paulson and Chen standing in the hallway, their intimidation attempt shattered against the unmoving wall of Marcus's resolve. Through the peephole, Marcus watched them walk away. Paulson was on his radio immediately, likely calling his supervisor, reporting that the easy pushover they'd been promised was anything but. Marcus's phone buzzed. A message from Skip. Package delivered. Full background on your target. It's uglier than you thought. Call when secure. Marcus locked his door, activated the portable jamming device he kept for secure communications, and dialed Skip's encrypted number. Talk to me, Marcus said. Skip's voice came through, crisp and precise. Dominic Ashford is a walking disaster. 3 sealed juvenile complaints for animal cruelty. Sealed because Daddy paid off the families and the records were expunged. 2 DUI arrests, both dismissed. 1 assault case from a nightclub fight, victim dropped charges after receiving an undisclosed settlement. Pattern of behavior, Marcus observed. It gets better. I found financial records showing regular payments to a veterinary tech named Miguel Ramirez. Ramirez works at Coastal Animal Hospital and has access to controlled substances. Text messages between them reference special supplies and party favors. This kid's been buying drugs, and who knows what else from a vet tech with access to a pharmacy. Can you prove the packed connection to the pentobarbital? Not directly. But Ramirez's work log shows he had access to the pharmacy the day before the poisoning. And get this. Dominic's credit card shows a purchase at a high-end chef supply store the same day. He bought an insulated cooler bag, the kind you'd use to transport temperature-sensitive materials. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. He planned it. This wasn't impulsive. He bought the poison, transported it properly, and deployed it deliberately. That's my read. But here's the problem. Proving it in court will be nearly impossible. Dominic's lawyers will bury this in motions and appeals. The evidence is circumstantial, no witnesses to the actual act. And with his father's connections, local law enforcement is already compromised. Compromised how? Chief of Police Raymond Cross has received over $200,000 in campaign contributions from Ashford Development for his mayoral run next year. Mayor Brennan's last 3 campaigns were bankrolled by Richard Ashford. The DA's office has a cozy relationship with Ashford's legal team. This isn't corruption, Marcus. It's a machine. Marcus was silent for a moment, processing. Then, what if we bypass the machine? How? Social media. Public pressure. If we can expose Dominic's pattern of behavior, make it a scandal that's too big for his father to contain, the system will have to respond. Skip made a thoughtful sound. You'd need something viral, something that makes people angry enough to demand action. I might have exactly that. Marcus was thinking of the evidence he'd collected. The napkin with the poison, the lab report, the traffic camera footage, the pattern of sealed complaints. Put together in the right way, presented to the right audience. Marcus, Skip's voice turned cautious. If you're thinking about going public with this, you need to be careful. The Ashfords will come after you with everything they have. Lawsuits, character assassination, potentially worse. Let them come, Marcus said simply. I've faced worse than lawyers and PR firms. I know you have. But this isn't a battlefield. You can't just eliminate a target here. I'm not planning to eliminate anyone. I'm planning to expose them. There's a difference. Is there? Because the way you sound right now, this feels personal. Marcus looked at a photo on his phone, one he'd taken that morning at the vet clinic. Titan, unconscious but alive, tubes and monitors attached to his ravaged body. A warrior who'd survived combat, abuse, starvation, and homelessness, nearly killed because he was convenient target practice for a bored sociopath. It is personal, Marcus admitted, but that doesn't make it wrong. Skip sighed. All right, I'm in. What do you need from me? I need you to create an anonymous account on social media, something untraceable. I'm going to document everything, the evidence, the corruption, the pattern of abuse. We're going to tell Titan's story in a way that makes it impossible to ignore. Narrative warfare, Skip said, a note of approval in his voice. Fighting them with their own weapons. I like it. Give me 6 hours to set up the infrastructure. Use encryption when you send me the materials. After the call ended, Marcus sat in the darkness of his apartment, his mind already working through the operation. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure that Dominic Ashford and people like him learned that some acts had consequences that money couldn't erase. Tomorrow he'd visit Titan. He'd make sure his warrior was healing, and then he'd launch an offensive that would expose the rot at the heart of Seacliff's golden facade. The war had entered a new phase, and Marcus Thorne was about to show Dominic Ashford what happened when you picked a fight with a Navy SEAL. Titan was awake when Marcus arrived at the clinic the next morning. The German Shepherd was still weak, still confined to the recovery kennel, but his amber eyes were clear and focused. When he saw Marcus, his tail attempted a feeble wag. Doctor. Vasquez met Marcus in the reception area, her expression cautiously optimistic. He turned a corner overnight. His liver and kidney function are improving. He's not completely out of danger, but he's a fighter. Can I see him? Absolutely. He's been asking for you. Marcus followed her into the recovery ward. The moment Titan saw him, the dog tried to stand, his legs shaking with the effort. Marcus was at his side instantly, dropping to his knees, his hand gentle on Titan's head. Easy, soldier. You don't have to get up for me. His voice was soft, the tone he'd used with injured men who needed to know they were safe. You did good. You survived. Now you just need to heal. Titan leaned his head into Marcus's hand, a gesture of absolute trust. This animal, who had every reason to distrust humans, had chosen to believe in Marcus. That trust was a sacred thing, and Marcus felt the weight of it settle over him like a mission brief. "I'm going to make this right," Marcus murmured. His words meant only for the dog. "The person who did this to you, they're going to answer for it. I promise you that." Dr. Vasquez watched from the doorway, recognizing something profound in the bond between man and dog. She'd seen owners with pets before, but this was different. This was two wounded souls recognizing each other, finding purpose in mutual protection. "He can come home in about 3 days if his recovery continues on track," she said. "He'll need medication, a special diet, and no strenuous activity for at least 2 weeks. Whatever he needs, he gets." Marcus stood, reluctantly removing his hand from Titan's head. The dog watched him with those intelligent eyes, understanding that Marcus had to leave, but trusting he'd return. "There's something else you should know," Dr. Vasquez said as they walked back to the reception area. "I had a visit from 2 police officers yesterday. They were asking questions about my lab report, suggesting that maybe I'd been mistaken about the substance identification." Marcus's expression hardened. "What did you tell them?" "I told them that I've been a veterinarian for 18 years, that my lab tech is certified and experienced, and that we don't make mistakes about lethal compounds." They weren't happy with that answer. She crossed her arms. "Mr. Thorne, I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, I want you to know you have an ally here. What was done to Titan was evil, and I won't be bullied into helping cover it up." Marcus extended his hand. "Thank you, Doctor. That means more than you know." She shook his hand firmly. "Give them hell." Back in his truck, Marcus opened his laptop and accessed the secure file-sharing system Skip had set up. Over the next 3 hours, he meticulously uploaded everything. Photos of Titan before and after the poisoning. The lab report confirming pentobarbital photos of the evidence napkin and the location where it was found. Traffic camera footage showing Dominic Ashford's Range Rover, Skip's research documenting. Dominic's pattern of sealed complaints and dismissed charges. Financial records linking Dominic to Miguel Ramirez. Screenshots of community posts about the incident. He wrote a narrative to accompany the evidence, carefully worded to avoid legal liability, but devastating in its clarity. 3 days ago, I began earning the trust of a stray German shepherd in Sunset Ridge Park. His name is Titan. He's a survivor, scarred, limping, but unbroken. On the morning of October 15th, someone deliberately poisoned him with veterinary-grade euthanasia drugs. They left the poison in food where a starving animal would find it. They did this for sport, for entertainment, because they believed an animal's life was worthless and they would face no consequences. This is Titan's story, but it's also a story about power, privilege, and a system that protects the guilty when they have the right last name. I'm a Navy SEAL. I've spent my career protecting people who can't protect themselves. Titan can't speak for himself. So I'm speaking for him. The evidence is here. The truth is here. What happens next is up to all of you. He sent the package to Skip with a simple message, "Ready when you are." Skip's response came immediately, launching in 30 minutes. Anonymous account established. Routing through 7 proxy servers. Untraceable. "This is going to explode, Marcus. You ready for that?" Marcus looked at a photo of Titan on his phone, the dog's eyes meeting the camera with dignity despite his pain. "Launch it." The post went live at noon on a popular social media platform, shared initially to local Seacliff community groups, animal rights organizations, and veteran support networks. Skip had titled it simply, "Justice for Titan, when privilege thinks it can kill without consequence." The response was immediate and volcanic. Within the first hour, 10,000 views, 2,000 shares, 500 comments. Within 3 hours, 100,000 views, 15,000 shares, trending locally. Within 6 hours, 500,000 views, 50,000 shares, picked up by regional news outlets. The comment section became a torrent of rage, sympathy, and demands for justice. "This is horrifying. How is this person not in jail? I live in Seacliff. Everyone knows the Ashfords are corrupt. Finally, someone's exposing them. That poor dog. Thank God for the SEAL who saved him. This is what a real hero looks like. Dominic Ashford needs to be charged. Now." Local news vans began appearing outside the Seacliff Police Department. Reporters were demanding comment from Chief Cross. The department's phone lines were overwhelmed with calls from outraged citizens. By evening, national news outlets had picked up the story. It had everything: a sympathetic victim, a clear villain, evidence of systematic corruption, and a hero figure in Marcus. Cable news ran with headlines like Navy SEAL versus wealthy heir, the fight for justice in elite California town. Dominic Ashford's social media accounts, which had been public and full of his luxury lifestyle brags, were suddenly flooded with thousands of hostile comments. Within hours, he deleted everything and set all his accounts to private. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots of his most tone-deaf posts posing with luxury cars, mocking poor people, bragging about getting away with a DUI, were already being circulated as evidence of his character. Richard Ashford's office released a statement. The allegations against Dominic Ashford are completely unfounded. This is a coordinated smear campaign by an unstable individual with a grudge against successful families. We will be pursuing legal action against all parties responsible for this defamation. The statement only poured gasoline on the fire. Social media erupted with mockery of the smear campaign defense. Memes were created. Hashtags trended. Number Justice for Titan. Number Ashford Accountability. Number Seal V's Scumbag. In his condo, Dominic watched his world implode in real time. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends were suddenly unavailable. His father had called him 6 times, each conversation more furious than the last. The final one had ended with Richard screaming, "You idiot! You documented everything. Your credit card, your text to Ramirez, everything. How could you be so stupid?" Because Dominic had never faced consequences before. Because he'd truly believed he was untouchable. Because he'd lived his entire life in a bubble where money made problems disappear. That bubble had just violently popped. At the Seacliff Police Department, Chief Cross sat in his office, watching the news coverage with a growing sense of dread. His phone was ringing off the hook. The mayor was demanding answers. The DA was suddenly interested in the case. And worst of all, the FBI's Civil Rights Division had called to inquire about reports of corruption in the handling of the investigation. Detective Carla Ruiz knocked on his door, her expression carefully neutral. "Chief, we need to talk about the Ruiz Titan case." "There is no case," Chief Cross said automatically. "It's a dead dog and a vendetta." "Sir, the dog isn't dead. He's recovering. And there's now overwhelming public pressure for a full investigation. If we don't act, the State Attorney General's office is going to step in. They've already called asking why we haven't made an arrest." Chief Cross felt his carefully constructed world beginning to crack. Dominic Ashford's lawyers will destroy any case we try to build. "Maybe," Ruiz said quietly, "but refusing to even try is going to destroy us. The evidence is solid, Chief. The lab report, the traffic camera footage, the financial connection to Ramirez, it's all there, and now it's all public. We can't make this go away." For the first time in his career, Raymond Cross realized he'd backed the wrong horse. Richard Ashford's power was vast, but it wasn't infinite. Not against a tidal wave of public outrage fueled by social media and backed by hard evidence. "Open a formal investigation," he said finally, the words tasting like defeat. "Assign it to you. Do it by the book." Ruiz nodded and left. Chief Cross sat alone in his office, realizing that his comfortable relationship with the Ashfords had just become a liability he could no longer afford. Marcus watched the news coverage from his apartment, feeling no satisfaction, only cold purpose. This wasn't about victory. It was about applying pressure until the system had no choice but to function correctly. His phone rang. Detective Ruiz. "Mr. Thorne, I wanted to inform you that we're opening a formal investigation into the Titan poisoning case. I'll need you to come in for a full statement. I'll be there tomorrow morning. There's something else you should know. Miguel Ramirez has agreed to cooperate. He's providing records of all controlled substance sales to Dominic Ashford in exchange for immunity. The DA is preparing to file charges." Marcus felt something unlock in his chest. "Thank you." "Detective, don't thank me. You did this. You forced everyone to pay attention." She paused. "I've been a cop for 15 years. I've seen how the system protects people like the Ashfords. What you did, exposing it all, that took courage. And it worked." After the call, Marcus drove back to the vet clinic. "Doctor." Vasquez let him in after hours. He sat beside Titan's recovery kennel, the dog now alert and watching him with those wise amber eyes. "We got him, Titan," Marcus said softly, his hand reaching through the kennel bars to touch the shepherd's head. "The guy who did this to you, he's going down. And his whole corrupt system is coming down with him." Titan's tail thumped once against the blanket. In his eyes, Marcus saw not just trust, but something deeper. Recognition. This dog understood that Marcus had fought for him, had refused to let his suffering be invisible. "You're coming home with me in 2 days," Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion he usually kept buried. "Real home, not the streets, not hiding in parks. Home, where you're safe, where you're protected, where nobody will ever hurt you again." The German shepherd rested his head on his paws, his gaze never leaving Marcus's face. And in that moment, the bond between them solidified into something unbreakable. They were pack now. They were brothers, and anyone who threatened one would answer to the other. The arraignment took place 6 days after the viral post exploded across social media. The Seacliff courthouse was surrounded by news vans, protesters with signs reading "Justice for Titan" and "Privilege doesn't protect poisoners," and a heavy police presence to manage the crowd. Inside, Dominic Ashford sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 expensive lawyers in suits that cost more than most cars. He looked smaller than he had in his social media photos, his arrogance replaced by barely concealed fear. The reality of criminal prosecution had penetrated even his bubble of privilege. Richard Ashford sat in the gallery, his face a mask of cold fury. He'd spent the last week trying to contain the damage, but every tool in his arsenal had failed. The media was too interested, the public too angry, the evidence too solid. For the first time in his life, his money couldn't buy him out of a problem. Marcus sat in the back row of the public gallery, Titan beside him. The German shepherd, now fitted with a proper service dog vest that Dr. Vasquez had helped Marcus obtain, sat at perfect attention. He'd recovered remarkably well, his strength returning day by day. The limp was still there, a reminder of his ordeal, but it didn't slow him down. The presence of man and dog together sent a ripple through the courtroom. This wasn't a hypothetical victim. This was a living, breathing survivor and his protector. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Chen, entered. Everyone rose. "Please be seated. We're here for the arraignment of Dominic James Ashford on charges of felony animal cruelty, possession of controlled substances, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." The lead defense attorney, a sharp-faced man named Gerald Hutchins, stood immediately. "Your Honor, the defense moves to dismiss all charges. The evidence is circumstantial at best, and this entire prosecution is the result of a social media witch hunt orchestrated by Counselor Judge Chen interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. "I've reviewed the evidence packet provided by the prosecution, lab reports confirming the substance, financial records linking your client to the source of that substance, testimony from Miguel Ramirez detailing the transaction, traffic camera footage placing your client at the scene. That's not circumstantial. That's a prosecutable case." Hutchins tried again. "Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record. Your client has 3 sealed juvenile complaints and 2 dismissed adult charges, all of which were included in the prosecution's filing under the pattern of behavior exception." "I'm aware of them, Counselor. Please, don't insult the court's intelligence." Marcus watched Judge Chen with growing respect. She wasn't intimidated by the Ashford legal team. She wasn't playing games. "Mr. Ashford, please stand," the judge commanded. Dominic stood, his lawyers flanking him protectively. "You are charged with felony animal cruelty under California Penal Code Section 597. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Dominic said, his voice barely audible. "The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial." Bail is set at $500,000. The defendant is to surrender his passport and is prohibited from leaving the state. Trial date is set for January 15th. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell with a sound like thunder. In the hallway outside, reporters swarmed. Marcus had prepared for this, but he still felt the urge to avoid the spotlight. A woman with a microphone thrust it toward him. "Mr. Thorne, how do you feel about today's arraignment?" Marcus considered his words carefully. "I feel grateful that the system is working as it should. Titan almost died because someone with power believed they could act without consequences. Today proved that nobody is above the law. What would you say to others who witness animal cruelty but feel powerless to act? Document everything. Report it to authorities. And if those authorities won't act, make sure the public knows sunlight is the best disinfectant. Corruption thrives in darkness. And what's next for you and Titan?" Marcus looked down at the German shepherd, sitting calmly at his side. "We're going home, we're going to heal. And we're going to live the life that Titan almost had stolen from him." He turned and walked away, Titan moving in perfect synchronization beside him. They pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions, and made their way to Marcus's truck. Inside the cab, away from the chaos, Marcus rested his hand on Titan's head. "It's not over yet, buddy, but we're winning. You're safe. That's what matters." Titan leaned into the touch, his amber eyes conveying trust and gratitude in equal measure. The trial, when it came in January, was swift and devastating for the defense. Miguel Ramirez testified about selling pentobarbital to Dominic, providing text messages that made the transaction explicit. The veterinary clinic's lab director testified about the substance found in Titan's system. Traffic camera analysts confirmed Dominic's presence at the park during the critical window. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. Elena Vasquez. "When Titan was brought to my clinic, he was minutes from death," she told the packed courtroom. "The dose of pentobarbital in his system was calculated to kill an animal of his size. This wasn't accidental exposure. This was intentional poisoning. And had Mr. Thorne not acted immediately, Titan would have died alone, in agony, because someone decided his life was worthless entertainment." The defense tried to paint Dominic as a young man who'd made a mistake. They brought character witnesses who testified about his charity work, his good grades in college, his bright future. But the prosecution brought Titan himself. Marcus walked the German shepherd into the courtroom, and the jury got to see not a hypothetical victim, but a living animal who still carried the scars of what had been done to him. They saw his slight limp. They saw the way he stayed close to Marcus, trusting but wary. They saw a survivor. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, guilty on all counts. At sentencing 2 weeks later, Judge Chen showed no mercy. "Mr. Ashford, you committed a calculated act of cruelty against a defenseless animal for no reason other than your own amusement. You did so believing that your family's wealth and influence would protect you from consequences. You were wrong." She sentenced him to 2 years in state prison, the maximum for felony animal cruelty, plus mandatory psychological counseling and a lifetime ban on owning animals. "Furthermore," Judge Chen continued, "I'm recommending that the State Attorney General's office investigate the systemic corruption in Seacliff that allowed your behavior to go unchecked for so long. This case exposed rot that goes far beyond one individual's cruelty. That investigation, launched the following month, would eventually lead to the resignation of Chief Raymond Cross, the early retirement of Mayor Douglas Brennan, and a wholesale reform of how Seacliff handled complaints against wealthy residents. Richard Ashford's empire didn't crumble, but it was severely damaged. Contracts were canceled. Business relationships soured. The Ashford name, once synonymous with power, became synonymous with corruption. But for Marcus and Titan, the story had already moved beyond courtrooms and consequences. 3 months after the trial, Marcus and Titan stood on the beach at sunset, the same beach where Marcus had first come seeking peace after his deployment. Titan, now fully recovered and filled out to a healthy 90 pounds of muscle, ran along the surf line, chasing seagulls with the joy of an animal who'd rediscovered safety. Marcus watched him, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, Genuine happiness, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. He'd saved Titan's life, but in truth, Titan had saved his. The dog had given Marcus something to fight for beyond himself, had pulled him out of the gray fog of post-combat stress, and given him a mission that mattered. Every morning feeding, every training session, every walk in the park was a reminder that life was worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth celebrating. Titan ran back to Marcus, his tongue lolling in a dog's smile, and dropped a piece of driftwood at his feet. An invitation to play. Marcus picked up the stick and threw it down the beach. Titan took off after it, powerful and free, his limp barely noticeable now. A woman approached, jogging along the beach with her own dog. She slowed when she recognized Marcus and Titan. "You're the seal, right? The one who saved Titan?" Marcus nodded, slightly uncomfortable with the attention he still received. "Thank you," she said simply. "What you did, it mattered. My daughter has been volunteering at the animal shelter ever since. She says if Titan could get justice, then every animal deserves someone to fight for them." After she jogged away, Marcus thought about those words. Every animal deserves someone to fight for them. Every person, too. Every vulnerable soul who couldn't defend themselves against those who believed might made right. He'd been trained as a weapon, honed to protect the innocent and destroy threats. But weapons needed purpose, needed direction. Without it, they were just dangerous tools waiting to cause damage. Titan had given him that purpose again, had reminded him that being a protector wasn't about nations or politics or geopolitics. It was about standing between the vulnerable and those who'd harm them. It was about saying no further and meaning it with every fiber of your being. Titan returned with the driftwood, dropped it, and sat at Marcus's feet, looking up at him with absolute trust and love. "Good boy," Marcus said, scratching behind the dog's scarred ears. "Best damn soldier I've ever served with." They stood together on the beach, man and dog, warrior and warrior, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Behind them was a battle won, justice served, corruption exposed. Ahead was a life built on mutual protection, earned trust, and unbreakable loyalty. The war was over. They'd both come home, and they'd done it together. If this story of courage, loyalty, and justice touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still walk among us. Your share helps spread this message of hope to someone who might be facing their own battle today. We would be so grateful if you would subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor integrity and the unbreakable bond between warriors, both human and canine. Please leave a comment below. We love to hear which part of this journey resonated with you the most. We pray that God blesses every single person watching this. May He watch over you, protect your families, and may He place protectors in your path when you need them most. If you believe in the power of standing up for those who cannot stand up for themselves, please share your faith with us by writing Amen in the comments below. Thank you for being part of our community. Stay safe, stay strong, and never underestimate the difference one person can make when they refuse to look away from injustice.